Let me know when we're live with everybody.
Okay, we are now live on YouTube as well as Zoom. So you may start your meeting.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is the March 25th ZBA meeting for the Village of Port Jefferson. We are in the general business portion of the meeting until 6:30 when we will begin the public hearings. Tonight we had 3 items on the agenda. One of them was adjourned. And I'm going to ask Cindy to read that into, Cindy, can you just read that into the record? Before you do that, just for the record, Antonio is sitting in for Lou Bukowski tonight. So, Cindy, can you read the adjournment request?
Do you want me to read it at 6:30 when we're in public hearing? Or do you want me to read it?
Okay, yeah, let's do that then, because then anyone that showed up will hear it.
Yeah, right. Okay.
All right. Let's do some housekeeping issues. Did everyone get the meeting minutes from last meeting?
Yes, I don't know if we'll be able to vote on them this time without Lou, though. Is that right?
Let's see. Tracy was absent. As long as we have Andrew,
No, Dan was here, right?
Dan, and Mark, we do have a quorum.
I see. Fair enough.
Yep. Don't forget about Dan over there, okay?
Was I in
Dan's
for
been working very hard on his beat. Say again, Andrew?
Was I in for Tracy last time?
I think so.
No,
Well, Tracy was absent, but I don't have on the record that we officially.
Were you at the
had-
meeting, Antonio?
He was.
I seem to remember that he was, but we just didn't get to the point of having conversation because we put off for a week or put off.
well, I
for a
think we
session.
had, was she here? I'm sorry, was
Tracy was
here last
absent.
week, Cindy?
No, she was
Okay.
absent.
And I recall making a joke about Antonio being off of mute for the first time, I think, right? Isn't that what we
Yeah,
said?
I think I was
Right.
on, but
Yeah.
you have a quorum.
So then then
No.
we
No.
can have 4 of you vote.
Right, does anybody have any questions or comments regarding the meeting minutes of 422? I'm sorry, 225.
No.
225. Seeing none, hearing none, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from 225. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Did everyone get copies of Lisa's reports tonight?
Yes.
Okay. There's the 2 that are on the agenda are both pool items. I don't know if you look at the applications. One of them is an application that we heard previously for different zoning requirements. The one over by Oakwood, just as you turn right off of Belterre there. It's that property that goes front to back. We saw it about, they wanted some fencing, which I believe we approved all their variances. So now they're coming in, they actually put in for all those variances so they could put a pool in, so they wouldn't have to go for another variance. And then there seemed to be some construction issues that were picked up by Tony Bertolato. So. Just want to look. And are they both being represented by Andrew tonight, Lisa?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Good. We did have some correspondence on one of the applications. I believe it was distributed by Cindy or Lisa.
That was the neighbor commenting. That was for 11 Jefferson Landing Circle.
Yes. 11 Jefferson Landing. Lisa, did you do some research on Jefferson Landing? I took a drive by it today. Did you look at the other houses in the neighborhood that we discussed?
Yeah, so I looked at three nearby houses on that one. I pulled the property files. I can share my screen so you can see which ones I'm talking about. So this is the house in question, 11 Jefferson Landing. Let me look back at my notes from those files. I looked at these two and this property, which all have pools in the rear yard, just to see if any of them had required variances. And none of them did. This one, 52, is actually meets all the required side yards. I think it actually has 30 feet to the pool. This one met all the required side yards as well. It has, I think, 50 feet from the side yards and 30 feet from the rear yard. This one was less clear because the setbacks were to the patio area around the pool rather than the pool itself, but it was issued the CO for the pool. So I assume that the pool is set back far enough within that patio to meet the standard. Otherwise, it was done in error because there isn't a variance for it. But those were the ones I looked at to see if there was any kind of comparable situation there, and those ones are actually all complying.
All right, Lisa, leave that picture up for a second. Just so the board knows, I went out there this afternoon to take a look at it. The house in question is the highest point on Jefferson Landing Circle, and then heading, I guess, what would be northeast, I guess, to the right of this picture here. All these houses are below the house next to them, so the elevation drops off. So the house in question, even the house past it on the other part of that triangle there, the second triangle, Lisa, that one there. That one is above the house that's in for the application, and then all the ones after it are below. So that the area drops off. They all have retaining walls. From what I could count, it would look like timber retaining walls. From what I could see from the street, I counted 6 or 7 at least high to the property next to them. So there is significant drop-offs as you go from property to property. So just something you're not seeing on the aerial. And you can see there are other pools in the area. There's one across the street, one two doors down, one diagonally behind it. Little history on this that Lisa gave me today. This was a clustered subdivision, so it means they were able to get a higher density if they did a clustering plan back in the 80s. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa.
Yes, that's right.
So the lots are a little tighter than they normally would, but that was done intentionally as part of a clustering plan for this whole subdivision.
Yeah, you'd see if you looked at the whole area that some of them have much larger lots. A lot of this land is very steep. So the clustering allowed for some of this area to remain natural, but to fit more houses on these smaller like corners and places like that.
And the letter we received is from that 56 house right there. And so they really, basically their backyard overlooks the backyard of 11 Jefferson Landing Circle.
They look down into the property. I stopped there today and I kind of just took a couple of steps onto their driveway. Their driveway looks down into the property of 11. So they are above them. Their deck from the street, you can see that their deck on 56 is above. There's some trees there, but they would be looking down into the property. So they're not exaggerating, the fact that they are a raised elevation. And that area, that part of Port Jefferson is very hilly. If you've ever been up there or walked that area, it's very hilly, especially if you have kids. The kids all trick or treat there. That's the big trick or treat area during Halloween. So it's a giant, it's one giant hill up and down. You definitely get your cardio in that day when you're.
Yeah.
I've walked that plenty of times with my kids. The second one, Lisa, can you throw the second survey up for Oakwood, please?
Sure. 1 second. Can you see that?
Yes. All right. If everyone remembers, 4 or 5 months ago, we saw this application. This property had 2 front yards to it, one fronting on East Broadway, one fronting on Oakwood. They came in for a variance for some white PVC fence, for a variance for having 2 front yards, and a couple other things. I think it was 3 or 4 variances. And they did all this so they could build the pool that you see on there. From what I understand from Lisa and Tony, they built the pool, but apparently they didn't build the pool 20 feet from the side yard setback. They built it 15, which is the Brookhaven requirement, not the village requirement. So they are back in. Tony, when he went to go do his final inspection, requested a final survey, and he discovered that it was 15 feet off the property line. So that's why they're in front of us today.
But the original plan presented to the planning board showed it 20 feet, correct?
Yes, and the building permit as well showed it 20 feet from the property line. I'm not sure how that disconnect happened. It's possible that the applicant submitted a building permit separate from their pool company, in which case the pool company may not have been going off of the application. Perhaps the applicant will have more answers on that.
Okay.
Lisa, can you show us the aerial for this, please, too?
Sure, I think it's actually right here. That's that one. So the house isn't on the lot. Can you see this one? Sometimes when my screen switches, you can't.
Yeah.
This is the lot. The house was newly built a few years ago, so this satellite image doesn't even show the house. The house is on the Oakwood side, and the pool is over here. I think the pool is, right, kind of just behind this
Right there,
shed
yep.
there.
Andrew,
Thank
you
you,
have to
Andrew.
teach us how to do that.
Andrew, when you retire, I can get you a part-time job with the village. You could do public applications for them.
It's up under view options. You see annotate. It raises up a menu of options, including a drawing command.
Just if I don't know, again, I drove past this property today. It is completely bordered on all 4 sides by PVC fence. The properties adjacent to it are almost at the same grade, if not a little lower than, but it's pretty level there. There's not much of a drop off. So as far as visuals from the neighbors, they really, with that fence there, there's really very little visual impact. However, I don't know if anybody's going to show up and have a comment from it, but it's very well screened by that PVC fence. I find the fence a little more shocking. There's so much white PVC all over the place when you drive both sides. There's a lot there, but I mean, it looks good, but it's just a lot of fence.
Yep.
I can only imagine what that cost. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
And Andrew's representing both of them tonight.
Yes, and I have Andrew and the homeowner of 101 Oakwood in the waiting room whenever we start the public hearing.
All right, what are we at? 6:28. So a couple minutes. You can let them in. I'll read this into the record. Lisa, do we have anybody waiting in the audience, so to speak?
Yes, we have 4 people currently in attendees, including Andrew Malguilaro, who's representing both files.
Okay. Okay. Oakwood is our first one. All right.
And we'll have to, I think, we'll obviously have to address 1213 first when we open the hearing.
Yes. There will. At 6:30, Lisa, you can invite Andrew in.
Okay.
It is now 6:30. The March 25th Zoning Board of Appeals is about to begin its public hearings. Tonight we have Antonio sitting in for Lou. Lou had a conflict for tonight's meeting, so Antonio will sit in as a full member for tonight's hearing. This is the 25th. We have 3 items on the agenda. The first item is 1213 Main Street, appeal number 562-21, section block and lot number 17, block 5, lot 7, RO Residential Office Zoning District. Property owner is Barbara Grillo. The applicant is Andrew Malguanera, care of Brookhaven Expeditors. The contact is Andrew Malguanera, care of Brookhaven Expeditors. This is a use variance request. Applicant requests a use variance to maintain an existing office use in the RO zone where the Incorporated Village of Port Jefferson Code, Section 250-16 allows for 1-family dwelling as permitted use and as conditional uses, 2-family dwellings and mixed conditional uses. All other are expressly prohibited. This is a holdover from the 2/25/21 hearing at the applicant and the zoning board's request, at the applicant's request and approved by the zoning board. I believe we have some correspondence on this regarding this application. Cindy, could you read the correspondence into the record?
Yes, I have an email here from Andrew Malguanera from March 25th at 3:32 p.m. this afternoon, requesting to adjourn the case on 1213 Main Street for tonight's hearing until the May 20th hearing while we acquire proper counsel. Thank you, Andrew Malguanera.
Okay, so we'll be holding this meeting over to the May 2021 hearing. Lisa, we got to vote on that, right, to carry that over? Am I correct?
I don't know if you are required to do that, but you can go ahead and do it if you'd like.
All right, I'm just going to, for the record, I'm going to make, at the applicant's request, the board will grant the request to carry it over to the adjournment over to the May 2021 hearing. I'll make the motion to do that. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
All right, Andrew seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None seen. All right, so we'll be carrying that over. Hello, Andrew. How are you tonight?
Good. How you doing?
Good. We held over your 1213 at your request.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. We're going to go into 101 Oakwood now. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. The second public hearing on the agenda is 101 Oakwood Road, appeal number 561-21, section 9, block 3, lot 2. It's in the RB2 single-family residence zoning district. The property owner is Teresa and Michael Viviano. The applicant is Andrew Malguanera, care of Brookhaven Expeditors. The contact is Andrew Malguanera, care of Brookhaven Expeditors. And the description is an area variance request. Applicant requests permission to maintain an existing in-ground pool 15.3 feet from the eastern property line where the village code requires, village code section 250-11, subsection 3, subsection C, paragraph 3, subsection A requires that all swimming pools be set back 20 feet from the property line. And we have Andrew present. I'm going to turn the meeting over to you, Andrew, and allow you to do your presentation.
All right. So what we have here is we were granted again 5-6 months ago for a pool. And the pool company who I deal with regularly in Brookhaven installed this pool and was under the assumption that they had 15 feet to work. It's not 20, even though 20 was presented. They just thought that was an arbitrarily, put on the survey, and they built it 15. It wasn't. It was a mistake and unfortunate. But here we are. They're paying the price for it, and there's no adverse effects to the surrounding area. It's a beautiful layout, and there's fencing all the way around, so there's no again, no adverse effects at all. And if the board has any questions, please let me know.
Andrew, a couple questions for you. First question is, let's actually stop here. I apologize, Andrew. We did not swear you in. Lorraine, I apologize. I did not swear Andrew in. Can we do that now? Just as a
Andrew, raise your hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
I apologize. That's my fault. But now we've got that covered. Andrew, just a couple of things. Did you get a copy of Lisa Rickmer's report dated March 22nd?
I did.
Okay. And just for the record, the board heard this application several months ago for a number of variances for putting up everything from fence to having two front yards, and including some other items, but which was all approved. And this was, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, done in anticipation of building this pool.
Exactly right.
Okay. Does anybody have, Andrew, are there any any other properties immediately adjacent to this that have pools in this area?
Not that I'm aware of. And not at this setback, but again, this is a unique lot in terms of its size, a lot bigger than the surrounding area. And, still, even with the 15-foot setback, it's still significantly away from every other house in the area.
Lisa, could you please put the aerial up of this property if you wouldn't mind?
No problem.
Okay, just for the point of order, and Andrew, you seem to be the expert on this. Could we just mark that which lot it is on here and roughly draw in a picture of where the pool is and where the house is? Andrew, you did that before, so I'm gonna let you handle that. Lisa, that appears correct?
Yeah, that's roughly accurate. The house is on the Oakwood side. The pool is approximately, at this point where the property kind of bow ties, and yeah, there is a fence that observes the requirements of the zoning board that it be set back into the property.
And Andrew, what you see, I'm sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rough sketch of approximately what's going on. I can bring up the survey if that helps.
Sure, just hold on one second before you do that. Andrew, you see what you see on the screen is relatively accurate to what's in the field?
Yes.
Okay. Andrew, confirm for the board and for the public that there is PVC, I believe 6 foot, if not taller fence on all sides of the property?
Yeah, 6 foot PVC around, there's no, you can't see it from anywhere but the lot in question.
Okay. And Andrew, for the record, the two houses that border the property, on this case, the picture on the right of the property, are both at the same grade roughly as the property. There's not one, these aren't elevated, so they'd be looking into the property.
No, as far as
They're
where
level with the property.
correct.
Okay, I just want to.
If not lower.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, at a minimum, either equal or lower.
Right.
How about that?
Right.
Okay. Could you bring the survey up, please, Lisa?
Yes.
And while Lisa's doing that, is there anyone on the board that has any questions for Andrew regarding this application? Okay. All right. All right.
Can you see
Seeing
the
none
survey?
and hearing none from, I can see the survey, yes. Thank
Okay.
you, Lisa. And seeing and hearing no questions or comments from the board for Andrew, Lisa, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this application?
Well, if anyone in the audience would like to speak on this application, you can feel free to use the raise hand icon that should be available to you, and I will bring you into the meeting as a panelist so that you may speak to the board. At this time, no one has indicated that they would like to make a comment. You can also access this chat feature and type comments in should you wish.
All right. Lisa, we're going to give it about a minute, see if anybody wants to type in anything or we see anything for a minute. And again, if there's any questions from the board, please feel free to ask Andrew at this time.
Just to clarify, you did say that the pool installers were provided with the site plan that was part of the building application that showed 20 feet.
Absolutely. We gave them the grant and the survey, and they filed for the permits on their own. But with filing, they had 20. But just again, dealing with them for as long as I have, do a lot of Brookhaven, and Brookhaven's 15. It was just an honest mistake on their part.
Andrew, who filed for the building permit? Did the homeowner or the pool company?
The pool company.
Okay. Andrew, I'm just gonna, since we're waiting, I'm gonna walk you through the 5 criteria just so that we cover it for the record. Whether this benefit can be achieved by any of the means feasible by the applicant, obviously they could have by putting it at 20 feet. So we're really wishing.
Right. But it wasn't my client. It was the pool company. Unfortunately.
Well, it's still your client.
Right.
You know, it's
Right.
all agent change. No one's
Understood.
Whether an undesirable change in the neighborhood, the character, or the nearby properties. Can you please comment on that?
No, I do not believe so.
And again, for the record, this property is bordered on almost all sides by white PVC fence, so it's not visible from the street or the adjacent properties.
Correct.
Whether this request is substantial, I believe it's a 23% request. So I don't know that I'd say it's substantial, but
Yeah, I don't feel so.
anybody on the board has a comment on that?
I agree that it's not substantial.
Whether this would have a adverse physical or environmental effect on the property or surrounding properties. I think we've proven that we've approved enough pools, and by the fact that a building permit was issued, that we don't feel like there would be any physical, environmental, unless anyone else has a comment. And the last one, whether it was self-created, I think we can say that it was self-created, whether by the applicant or the pool company. It's still, it's still self-created in one form or another.
On that one, I don't disagree, but on the first one, I think it would not be feasible for them to remedy it in this case because we're talking about an existing pool. So were this an application for an unbuilt pool, I'd call it the way you did, but I'd propose to call it the other way if people agree. In this case,
right? It wouldn't be.
There's not a feasible means to remedy it or change it. Yeah.
Other than ripping out the pool, which is not really reasonable or feasible. So, right.
Precisely.
Right. That being said, Lisa, confirm one more time that there's no one that wants to speak on this application.
No one's added a chat and no one's raised their hand.
Okay. So seeing none and hearing none, I'm going to make a motion that we close this hearing. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Second. All right, Antonio seconded that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're going to close this hearing. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
All right. Our second application, which Andrew is also representing the applicant, so we're going to leave him. We're going to leave him as a panelist. Is going to be 11 Jefferson Landing Circle, appeal number 563-21. It's section 14, block 5, block 52, zoning RB1 single family residence. The property owner is Lynn Mancini. The applicant is Andrew Malguanera, care of Brookhaven Expeditors. Contact is Andrew Malguanera, care of Brookhaven Expeditors. And they're looking 2 area variances requested. Applicant requests permission to install an in-ground pool 10 feet from 2 side property lines where the village code section 250-11 Section C, subsection 3, subsection A requires that all swimming pools be set back 20 feet from any property line. Andrew, I'm going to let, just for the record, this pool is not built yet. Can you confirm that?
Correct.
Unlike the previous application. Yeah. Andrew, the floor is all yours.
All right. So this is, as you can see from the lot, just basically we're here because of the uniqueness of this lot. It's unique to the area, completely, probably one of the smallest lots in the area, and there's no feasible way to put a pool in this lot without being in front of the zoning board. We're not going for a big pool. 18 by 36 is standard, and requesting a 10-foot side yard on each side just because we have no other alternative other than making an extremely small pool that wouldn't be, worthwhile at that point. Had we had an alternative, we would have taken it. But this lot is unique. There is a similar lot next door that is triangular in shape, but not even as small as ours. And if, again, as I said, if there was another way to get this pool in, my client would do that. That being said, they're still holding 10 feet, which is pretty pretty good setback as is. And if the board has any questions, please let me know.
First, Lisa, can you please put up the aerial for this property?
Certainly, 1 minute. Okay.
And Lisa, just for the record, could you show what the point on which property is the property in question on the aerial? So
This
people
property
watching know
here
something.
is the one in question.
Okay. And Andrew, you confirm that?
It is, and as you can see from the aerial, there are other pools in the area, although they do not need variances. They are substantially bigger lots and have the ability to not need a variance because they're able to put pools with the required setback. We are not able to do that with our current situation.
Okay. Andrew, I was out at the property today, just from the street. I took a look at the property, both that and the triangular property next to it. I believe it's number 56.
Mhm.
A couple of concerns that I have is that the property slopes off significantly as you go, in this case, to the right of this picture. All the houses are elevated above, starting with 56. 56 is above 11. 11 above 9 and continue.
Right.
They all
Yeah,
have
it's a hill. Right.
they all have significant retaining walls, and in this case, 56 would be looking down into your applicant's property. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I also asked Lisa, and Lisa, you're gonna, when I'm done, can you just please confirm anything I've said, whether it be accurate or inaccurate? Is that the pools that we see on the aerial, 2 doors down, the one across the street, the one, I believe at 50, but I can't see the number clearly, all have pools but did not require variances to get the pools. Lisa, can you please confirm that?
That is correct. These 3 properties do have pools with permits, and I did check them because they look somewhat close to the property lines, but they all meet and exceed the pool setback requirements.
And the one that did require a variance was for the patio and not the pool.
So it
Correct me
didn't
again,
require a
Lisa, if I'm wrong.
variance. The patio here is set back less than, it's like 19.5 here, but then there's an additional distance, the patio to the pool, and it's also set back less than 20 feet here, but they didn't need a variance for that. You can put a patio wherever you want, but the pool,
Okay.
I believe, it was issued, it's CO without a variance.
Okay, and if no one has any questions on the aerial, I'm going to ask Lisa to please put up the survey for the property.
Okay. Pull up that survey, 1 second.
If anyone has any questions for Andrew as we're going, please feel free to ask him from the board.
Well, I'll wait until the survey's up. I have a question.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, there's the survey.
So on the survey, it looks like it's a semi-rectangular 18 by 36 foot pool, correct?
It's more an envelope that we put on there just to show it's going to be 18 by 36 in overall shape. But it's not, the pool has not been selected because we have not gotten approval yet. So that was just an envelope that it would fall into, with the approval granted, it won't necessarily be that shape. It'll be irregular, in some shape.
Okay. The reason I ask is I was wondering, depending upon the shape of the pool you choose, it could at least reduce the necessary variance to achieve the benefit that the applicant is seeking, right?
Well, I mean, not at 20 feet. I mean, the 5 feet cut off on both sides would be, I mean, it
Well,
wouldn't,
agreed.
I would stop short of saying kiddie pool, but not a pool worth building.
100%. I mean, I understand like there's no way to achieve it without seeking a variance, but
Mhm.
you could reduce the 50% you're seeking to a more reasonable level by adjusting the shape of the pool, right?
Marginally. I mean, 18 by 36 is pretty much it's not a big pool, and I mean, we can talk a couple feet here or there to an extent. But again, I mean, we're only here because of the uniqueness of the lot. It's just, you don't see a lot like this with the shape it is in the backyard that we have. It's just, it's unprecedented for the area. And, to prohibit our client from having a pool when other people can, because their lots are just bigger. I mean, just, is just kind of not right to our client.
Mm-hmm. And what about any plans to at least, as stated earlier, I think the neighbor with the other triangular property basically overlooks that backyard. What are, if any plans to provide any privacy or barrier there?
I mean, whatever the board deems necessary. I don't know if they had a letter or they're here to explain what their why they'd have a problem with it. Because if they put a pool of any size, there's still a pool there. So I don't see what the hardship would be by my client having a pool on their property.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just for a point of order, a point of clarification, there's a gazebo shown on this property. That gazebo has been removed under the previous permit. And it's just the paperwork's just being in process, but staff has confirmed that it was removed in accordance with all village requirements. Right, and they did that with keeping as much space as they can, because it's a tight window. This is the only place they could put a pool, and they understand the space is limited. They removed the gazebo to account for that. But the options there. I mean, this is pretty much it. Andrew, how long has your client lived in the property? I don't know. I would say I have at least, I don't know the exact date. I would say at least 5 years, if not more. Okay. And so,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to ask is it the long side or which of the sides is the 36 on the non-rectangle?
The long way. At the longest point, it'd be 36, but it will go in to hold the 10 feet. I mean, we're not going to have a mistake like the last case where we asked for 10 and we get 5. I mean, we just don't have the exact pool picked out. So the envelope that we put that's where we put the envelope, but it's not going to be exactly that. It's just at the closest point on each side will be 10 feet.
The fences that are featured on the survey, are those currently accurate as far as their make and height?
Correct. Yeah, the survey was just done, in September. So yes.
Okay. And we would need to have this obviously at a minimum of 5 feet height.
Correct. Correct. So I mean, whatever the board imposes in terms of potential privacy, my client's willing to do. I mean, at the end of the day, they just want a pool for their family because they tend to be here for a long time. So whatever they can do to help the surrounding neighbors, they're all for it.
Andrew, can I ask you a question on this survey here? There's 2 wood retaining walls there. When I was out there, they looked fairly substantial. Can you give us some idea of what the height of those retaining walls are? if you know?
I mean, as far as I know, they were just, yeah, I mean, the serve, it's 30 inches and 20 inches each, you know, so, I mean, maybe stacked on like they are, they might appear to be bigger combined, but I mean, not tremendous. And they were built with the property, as you can see with the neighbor above them. That's the way it was set up.
Okay. Does the board have any other further questions for Andrew before I open it up to the public? Seeing none here, Andrew, we had a correspondence from somebody, and I'm going to ask that either Lisa or Cindy read the correspondence in to the record. I believe this person was the adjacent neighbor of this property. Lisa or Cindy, could you take care of that for us?
Sure, I can read it in. These notes are in reference to the variance request of 11 Jefferson Landing Circle, which is scheduled for review on Thursday, March 25th, 2021. We live at 56 Jefferson Landing Circle, the property adjacent to 11 Jefferson Landing Circle, lot 52. We believe it is critical to maintain the village's requirement of a 20-foot buffer between a pool and the property line. Anything less destroys the aesthetic, which makes Port Jefferson such a desirable place to live, and undermines the reason these ordinances were instituted in the first place. This particular situation involves property that is already quite compromised, as both properties are wedge-shaped, narrowing drastically toward the rear of the backyard. The size and shape of these triangular properties necessarily limit what is possible to construct in the side and rear yards. In addition, the topography of the area is uneven. Our property is at a much higher elevation than that at 11 Jefferson Landing Circle. This makes it virtually impossible to buffer sight, sound, etc., since a fence or shrubbery could not provide the height necessary. Thank you. Theodora and Paul Heischman.
Andrew, you have any comments or questions on that, or?
I mean,
Statement?
kind of correlating with what they're saying, this lot is not in conformance with normal building lots, and this is just the way that it was created with the cluster and with this development. So I mean, to say someone in the village has a right to a pool and another person does not have a right to the pool, it's not as if they have a tremendous yard to work with, and this is the lot that they have, and they just want an average pool, and in the village, I don't see how this interferes with the overall characteristics of the village, as in pool variance has been granted many a times, and this is as unique as it gets. I mean, this is not something where we have another option. This is not a tremendous pool, and had we had another option, we wouldn't be here. It's just, this is the only method to get this for them to have a pool, and it's not their it's not their fault that their lot is unique and was made this way to accommodate this development.
And to speak on that, as I mentioned in the general business section, and again, Lisa, correct me if anything I say is inaccurate. This subdivision was built back in the 80s. It was a clustered subdivision, which basically means that they were allowed greater density for small lots to try to preserve more open space. As you see in the aerial, there's a lot of preserved area on the back end of the lots, which I assume is either covenant or restricted development. So that is why some of these lots were allowed to be built, in order to fall in line with the clustered subdivision. Again, Lisa, is anything I said inaccurate?
That all is accurate, yes.
And at the same time, they still have the ability to make a pool without the setbacks, because they're still bigger in nature than ours. And it's just the way it is for us.
Well, the nature of the clustered subdivision is the properties are not all the same size, but they also don't necessarily conform to the traditional setbacks and lot size requirements of the zoning district, because the whole development as a whole was taken to calculate the density that would have been allowed with traditional setbacks and lot sizes. And then to preserve open spaces, smaller lot sizes were permitted in certain places.
Right. But at the same time, I feel like my client's entitled to having a pool like everyone else in the village, and had they had an option to have it any other way, they would, you know.
Lisa, may I ask, because the cluster subdivision allowed for smaller lot sizes, does it allow for smaller setbacks of the primary structure, accessory structures, any other bulk regulation leniency?
All of the houses were allowed the setbacks that were approved with the subdivision development. So while some of the houses may maintain setbacks that are smaller than is normally required, if they are going to further encroach on those setbacks, they still require a variance, as does everyone else in the village.
So it's not that there's a sort of a consideration of the rules. It's more that the site plan overall for all of the developments when they were subdivided was approved globally at that time.
Exactly. So the houses and the building envelopes as they were approved as part of the subdivision are, and the houses were then built on them. There's no undeveloped lots here. They maintain their, they are allowed to maintain their existing setbacks, but any further encroachment is.
And under the code or the consideration that allows for cluster subdivisions as an exception to the lot size, is there any consideration or verbiage given to the right of a parcel which is abnormal or smaller than the otherwise minimum parcel for that zone to nonetheless be able to have a pool, or that's just not mentioned?
No, that is not included in anywhere in that the language of the clustering of subdivisions. That is specifically intended to allow for the preservation of open spaces.
Thank you.
Lisa, you can take down the survey. Does anyone else on the board have any questions or comments for Andrew?
No.
All right, seeing none, hearing none. Lisa, do we have anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this application?
There are two people in the audience. If either of you would like to make a comment, you're welcome to raise your hand or type into the chat box. So let me just see. I see one hand raised, and I will be bringing in the neighbor, Teddy Heichman. Hold on. Okay, I have brought Teddy Heichman in. I don't see any audio or visual.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I hear her now.
Hi. Hi.
Good evening, Ms. Heichman.
Hi.
Ms. Heichman, before you speak, I'm just going to have Lorraine swear you in, please. You're not an attorney for the record? Are you an
Okay.
attorney?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Brosnan, first of all, we're allowed to swear in over the internet now, but I mean, I don't see her, so I don't know if that's
Okay.
legal.
Ms. Heichman, is it possible just for the swearing in, you could do a
Sure.
visual for us?
Well, do I have to start the video? Is that what I have to do? How's this? Is that? Oh, there I
Yeah.
am. Okay.
There you are.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay, Ms. Heichman, please raise your right hand, please. Do you
Yes.
swear that the testimony?
Paul, hold on one second. Mr. Heichman, are you going to want to speak? Perfect. Thank you. Could you raise your right hand too, so we can swear you both in
I'll
just for the
raise
record?
just in case.
Okay.
Well,
Right,
Heichman,
perfect.
Mr. Heichman, what is your name?
Paul?
Paul
He's
Heichman? Okay,
Yes.
just for the record. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Heichman, raise your right hands, please. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for being patient with us, Mr. and Ms. Heichman. And for the record, you are the person that sent in the correspondence saying you live at 56 Jefferson Landing Circle?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Thank you. Please proceed with any questions or comments.
Well, I just have, I want to reiterate what I put in the in the message there in the comments. This is extremely close to our property. 10 feet is very, very tight. And our property is narrow as it is. It's if you looked at it, you'll see that it narrows to almost to a point in the back. And I understand the gentleman who wants to put in the pool saying people have a right to a pool, and absolutely, I agree, people have a right to a pool if there's enough room to put a pool and not, I mean, we all chose our pieces of property knowing what we had, and our piece is very skinny. There's not much we can do with it. We do what we can, as do all the neighbors with decking or whatever they can fit. But we don't expect to do something that's going to break the code variances of the village, because it's something that we want when it infringes on someone else. And if you were at the property today, you realize that it is absolutely all we see is to look down into this property. So it will be us looking down at this very, very close pool. That's what we will see. That is our view.
Thank you, Ms. Heischman. I was at the property today, and as I previously said, your property is elevated over the property in question and continues so forth further down the road, further down the street. Does any member of the board have any questions for Mr. or Mrs. Heischman? Seeing none, hearing Ms. Heischman, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I can't think of anything other than, you know, I mean, we bought in Port Jefferson for a reason, and we were hoping to resell our house for a reason, and that is that the value is there, that the people respect neighbors and ordinances that are there, because we want to keep the area looking the way it looks, and I'm just hopeful that you will do that.
Thank you very much. The board appreciates your comments. And again, does anybody have any questions for the Heischmans? Seeing none, hearing none, I'm gonna ask you to say goodnight to you, and thank you again for your comments.
Thank you.
Lisa, is anyone else who'd like to speak on this application?
No, let's see. There's one other person in the waiting room. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand or enter something in the chat. At this point, they have not raised their hand or entered anything in the chat.
All right, seeing none and hearing none, I'm gonna just walk through the criteria. Andrew, we're gonna walk through the criteria like we always do. Whether this benefit can be achieved by other means feasible to the applicant. Go ahead, Andrew, I'm gonna let you answer these.
As we said, if there was another option, we would have done it. And going back to the overall setbacks with what the neighbors have said, I do feel the fact that they are raised up almost to a degree is showing that we're actually further away from them than would be if we were on the same level. They look down on our property one way or the other, but the fact that they're raised up, they're further away from the pool than otherwise would be. And I feel like that's a big factor here as well. And in terms of overall resale value, I think a pool only adds to it to cover that.
Okay. Whether you think there's undesirable change in the neighborhood character to nearby properties.
I don't think there's any difference in character. There's many pools in the neighborhood. It's just ours is closer because of the lot that we're on.
Okay, Andrew, I'm gonna just for the record, that I may err on the side of caution and say there may be a little bit of an undesirable change because although you mentioned the other ones, from what we've been told by staff, they all meet the variance requirements.
Right, but on bigger lot, on substantially bigger lots.
No, we work with what we're working with. What we have.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Whether the request is substantial, 50%, I think we could, by the numbers, it sounds substantial. But we've approved other ones with this as well. Whether the request will have an adverse or physical or environmental impact, I think we answered that in the last one, pool. We don't think we're going to have any physical impacts. And whether the alleged difficulty is self-created, Andrew, I'm going to let you answer that first.
It's self-created only for the fact they want a pool, not in the fact that they have, there's just no other way to do this. It's self-created for the simple fact that they want a pool and this is the only way to have it.
Okay. Does any other members have any questions or comments for the applicant? Seeing none, hearing none, I'm going to make a motion to close this hearing. Do I have a second on the motion? Yeah, and Antonio second the motion. All in favor? Aye.
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 All right. Thank you, everyone that's listening. We appreciate your questions and comments.
Thanks,
Andrew,
everyone.
thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Have a
As
good night,
usual,
guys. Thank you.
you're welcome. All right.
So the meeting
done
will
with the-
remain open, but the public portion is now closed, right? Or you're about to.
Correct. All right. Let's talk about
Did we, hold on,
101.
did we lose Antonio?
I think you booted Antonio instead of Andrew.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll promote him. Sorry, Antonio. That wasn't a dig.
Lorraine, the public hearing portion's over, so you're welcome to hang out, but we don't need the transcript
Okay,
after
good.
this.
I'm glad you let me know. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay,
I'm
thank-
gonna leave. Okay?
Thank you, Lorraine.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Lorraine. Have a
Bye-bye.
good night.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Sorry, for some reason the names keep bouncing around on me when I try to grab them. I'm having a hard time here.
Antonio, if you vote too many times, that's what happens.
Yeah.
So Andrew's calling, right?
Now
We're just trying to keep you from
moved.
getting the spotlight.
Yeah, seriously. I'm taking all the glory here. All right. Sorry about that, Antonio. Sometimes the names move as I'm grabbing them and I have trouble controlling that. Okay.
All right. Let's start out with 101 Oakwood. What's everybody's feelings, comments, questions about 101 Oakwood? Other than the pool manufacturer is a dope, and he should really have just eaten the cost of moving the pool. But
Well, they
That's
better
not
have
really
eaten the
reasonable
cost
or
of the
feasible.
application. I hope they ate the
I
cost
hope
of the
they-
application. Yeah.
Here's my challenge.
I hope so.
Big deal. I mean, it's not detrimental to the neighbors. It's not, but my concern is like, what kind of precedent are we setting by saying, hey, listen, if it's no big deal, go ahead and install it and then come in and ask us about it and we'll approve it. Right? Like, there's a reason that these ordinances are in place. And furthermore, I mean, the original plan called for it to be 20 feet, right? So, I just have concerns that if we do this, if we approve it, then what's stopping someone else from doing the same thing? I'm just going to build it however I want, and then I'll come in and get it approved after the fact, and it's no big deal. Well, it kind of is a big deal.
I don't disagree with you, Dan. I think you're right, but this board also has approved things after the fact as well. In this case, you're right. I mean, we've dealt with stuff that's 20 or 30 years old is one thing. To deal with something that's 5 days or 5 weeks old is another story. And
because I do recall, yeah, certainly we've approved pools that have been there for 20 or 30 years, right? I mean, that to me is different than this. And we've also approved pools that we had a pool last year that was like a foot off, right? I think it was just probably because they messed up, right? Like, that's not this. And so, yeah, it's just, but then again, I have to ask a question. And so if we were to deny this, what is the recourse? I don't even understand what they would do.
Well, recourse is they probably wouldn't get a CFC for the pool, right?
Right. And then they can never sell their house, right?
Well,
Yeah,
right,
they'd
unless
have-
they fill the pool in.
Ouch.
Go ahead, Lisa. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that the recourse is that they would have to fill in the pool and redo it, which is not really a feasible thing to do because you have already disturbed the ground. So my understanding of it is that is a very difficult proposition.
Oh, interesting.
But I see. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with your point. So I'm saying that is and what would likely happen is they would open without a CFC and they would be sent to court for it. And I don't know how that would follow.
I didn't want to ask on the record, Lisa, but who is the pool company?
That's information that would be in the building permit application. I actually don't have it in my zoning board application.
Because I would find out who it is, and I would make sure that this doesn't become a habit with them, because I could see them doing other jobs and them in front of us constantly. The downside to this whole thing is we'll punish it. Dan, you're absolutely right. I don't disagree with you. And I do have a little bit of an issue with it as well. I think you bring up a very valid point, but you're really punishing the homeowner for the contractor, and if we deny the CFC, we're really punishing the homeowner for the contractor's negligence. To our knowledge, the homeowner did not say, yeah, just sneak it in over there. I don't think 5 feet would have made a difference to the homeowner. If you've seen this yard, it's huge. I mean, you've seen it from the survey.
That very easily could have just been done the right way, and we wouldn't even be talking about this.
Right, and to our knowledge, Mark, to our knowledge is doing some work there. I mean, they could well have said, just put it over here. Or there's also a frustration that, you know, like the architect in me sees a contractor that gets a drawing that tells them where to put it and puts it somewhere else. It's just like my whole spine goes up, because like you show up to a job site and somebody's done something other than what's on the drawings. You just makes you want to tear your hair out, and they are responsible for that.
Right.
So I don't know. It would be, because in this case it's contractor error, the recourse would not fall on the homeowner to make them redo it. But I don't know if we turn it down, if that's what ends up happening. It then becomes a fight between the homeowner and the contractor.
Right, and the contractor says, you know, go scratch, sue me. And at the end of the day, the homeowner's really stuck with it, because should for some reason they want to sell the house a year later, they're the ones who are screwed.
Does the village license companies to work in the village and have any say so over vetting or approvals in that regard?
No.
You don't have a list of approved contractors of pool installers that are okay.
No.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was curious to see who it was, because if it was like a Swim King or one of the bigger ones, those guys are usually pretty good. But, you know, again, although I agree with Dan, and I 100% agree with Dan, I'm not going to say this board hasn't approved pools that don't meet the side yard, but those are pools that have been established. And I feel like by saying no, we're letting the contractor off the hook, because he's basically going to tell the homeowner, throw his hands up. I don't think he's going to dig up the pool. I mean, I would find that hard to believe, not without a court order or something. And I feel like the homeowner is going to get is going to get screwed in this whole thing. And, you know, and I don't, in my personal feeling, I don't think the homeowner with this size of this property said, squeeze it over to the fence. There would be no reason for that. That whole property is wide open.
I would say, though, I know we're not on the record for the public meeting, but you know, if there are interested parties and expediters listening, that like every case is different. And part of the reason, if we give this a pass, that we choose to do so is because, like Dan said, it's not actually that close to anybody's house. It's not actually, you know, it's sort of this particular case, you can let 23% slip, but that doesn't mean people should start building things other than they get permits for and coming and asking for forgiveness instead of permission, because then the whole system gets upended. It might not always work in other situations.
And if you look at the Jefferson Landing situation, he's got a building envelope. So if he went another 2 or 3 feet closer, that's a big deal in that case. Where in this case, it's pretty much a wide open lot. I mean, so Dan's point could be, you know, if the same pool guy, since Andrew worked with him for a lot of time, put in the next pool and he puts it 2 or 3 feet over, you've got a very different situation, very drastic situation as far as I'm concerned, because of the shape of the property. Anybody else have any questions or comments, Antonio?
Yeah, this was a new construction, or I should say, this home was developed fairly recent, right?
Yes, it was.
Within the last year, I believe.
No, not within the last year. It's been constructed for a few years. Let me see. It has its CO from 2017.
The last 5 years.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
It's very nicely done. I mean, the property is beautiful.
I
the
believe
homeowner's been following all the rules. Yeah,
no, I was going to say, I believe it was constructed by maybe Campo, and then it was sold. So even though the home was completed in 2017, I don't think necessarily the current homeowners were in that year. They purchased it then sometime thereafter.
Any other questions or comments from the board on this?
No, but is it weird to talk, Dan, if you're still on the fence about it, a strategic no vote, so it's not unanimous and sends a message if you're worried?
I was thinking about that, but you know, I mean, I'm not. I feel I'm of two minds, but I know of which mind I'm going to go with.
Okay, then I won't say anymore.
I'm not going to tell you how to vote, Dan, but I think you'd be well within your right, or at least understandable, to do that, because I think this application, as you said earlier, gives this board great pause, because you feel like you're giving everyone license to do what you want, and we'll just go to the board, and you're 100% correct. So, I mean, it does give it great pause, and I hope that that our village inspectors and people are really making sure that when people come in for applications, they're aware of what their obligations are. And I know they are, but you still can't control what happens out in the field.
Yeah.
That being said, if no one else has any questions or comments, I'm going to make a motion that, although I do it with great pause, approve this application as submitted. And just for the record, I'm going to walk through the 5 criteria. Whether the benefits can be achieved by other means feasible to the applicant. I don't think it's feasible to the applicant to, in this case, the homeowner, to rip up the pool to move it 5 feet for a mistake that wasn't there, and the impact of the mistake is not really affecting any of the other homeowners. The property's all level, so I don't think it would be feasible to lay that correction on the applicant. And anyone give a comment if you disagree. Whether an undesirable change would be in the character of the neighborhood, because I believe this property is so well screened, I don't think it'll have any impact on the neighborhood. I think the fencing would have been a bigger impact, and we approved that several months ago. Whether the request is substantial, I believe it's 23%. I don't see it as substantial unless someone else has whether the request would have an adverse physical or environmental effect. I don't think installing a pool has it, especially in this case, it's not in any sensitive areas. And whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. That, I believe, it was self-created, whether it was by the homeowner or the contractor, it's still, they're one and the same, they're linked in one way. That being said, again, with great pause, I make a motion that we approve this application as submitted. Do I have a second on it?
I will second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, so everyone voted yes, then no no's. Okay. Thank you. And Dan, I still say you're right. I just, it's kind of a slippery slope, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think if it was the 11 Jefferson, I think it would be a completely different application.
No doubt. And like Andrew said, every case is different. If people want to do the wrong thing and have to pay for all the fees for an expediter and everything else after the fact, then I guess good luck.
With no sure thing.
Right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Better off doing the right way the first time. And I think all the other factors outweigh this one very frustrating factor. So that's why I voted yes.
I agree there.
And before we move on to the next application, Lisa, can you just tell us what the secret determination for the
Oh yeah, sorry.
for the 101 Oakwood was?
It was in the report, but it's a type 2 secret action and is not subject to review because it is a granting of an area variance for single family residence.
Thank you. We're going to discuss the 11 Jefferson Landing, which is definitely a completely different application. I have some difficulty approving this, or voting, or seeing it in a positive light. I shouldn't say approving it because I don't want to make my decision until I hear everyone's. But a couple of things. Again, Lisa, correct me if anything I'm saying is wrong. All the other properties in the adjacent neighborhoods have pools that meet the side yard setbacks. Yes, I agree the lot is triangular shaped, but you bought the lot that way. You knew the lot was that way. You lived with it that way. It was no surprise. It wasn't like the village changed the lot lines or you just bought the property. As I said in the hearing, I was out at the site. There is significant, the property next to it, which is the people that spoke at the public hearing, came out and they are looking down at it. In this case, I think 10 feet, although the number seems de minimis. it is still a considerable number in this application. Just in my opinion, I think you're trying to shoehorn a pool in there, right, wrong, or indifferent. I also am not thrilled with the fact that he gave us a building envelope instead of a pool, which after seeing the previous application does not give me great confidence that he will follow the rules, or, you know, well, it was the building envelope, so it's another foot one way or another,
Well,
you know, type of thing, especially when.
It's not even relevant to mistakes that might be made or the previous application. I think providing a building envelope instead of a design is by definition asking for more than you need, and also not telling us what it is that you're actually going to get, right? Like it's possible that with some curvilinear pool, he's asking for less, which would get him below 50% on the ask, which would just be strategic to begin with. But, you know, if it's curvilinear, maybe it's like 12 feet at the closest, but actually that's only just for one little point, right? But also that envelope that was drawn on there that wasn't dimensioned was not 36 by 18. It was longer than twice it was wide. It was not a rectangle. It was a ballpoint pen on a survey. I don't know anything about that envelope from that presentation, really, but it doesn't even represent a design. So we're going to be if we were to grant this, we would be granting a 10-foot setback that he almost certainly doesn't need. Mm-hmm. So
and to go with something that Dan said, the previous application, which is setting precedents, to my knowledge, this board usually has a pool design. You know, usually someone has a pool design, rectangular, you know, kidney shape, pick a shape, is usually on the survey, and then the board knows what the pool is going to look like. I don't remember the last time, if at all, we ever approved an envelope, which gives me great concern because, like you said, you know, maybe you need 2 feet less over here and, you know, a foot over here, you know, it just gives me a little concern with an envelope, especially, I feel like it gives them too much room, too much wiggle room. And
I have a question. When we did the ferry building on West Broadway, we declined it at first on several grounds. I wasn't there for the voting happened on the second day, and I wasn't there for the follow-up conversation. But if I recall correctly, we turned down the first ask, and they resubmitted with some modifications for a lesser number. And you can't resubmit for the same variance, but you can with a smaller percentage of the same area variance ask. Is that correct, Lisa?
Sorry, my headset was up. They had to first submit a letter to the board requesting to be reheard and showing that, to your satisfaction, they had substantively changed the application enough that it was not effectively, they cannot make you continuously rehear the same variance application, which is why they can't come and ask for, you know, in that case, you know, a 36-foot building, and then come the next week and ask for a 36-foot building, and then come the next week and ask for a 36-foot building. If you've denied them, you've denied them on that. Right. So they had a right, in their case, they changed the building, they wrote to you, they requested, we've been able to lower this, we still require a variance, we believe this is substantially different. If you agree, will you allow us to resubmit? And you agreed, and they resubmitted.
So if in this scenario, analogously, we were to turn them down today, they could redesign, or actually just design the pool with a more specific, perhaps different variance, probably necessarily different, lesser request, greater setback, and then write a letter to you to ask to reapply.
Yeah, or write a letter to the ZBA to ask to reapply.
And then we would have to agree to do that, right? We would have to.
Yeah. You'd have to agree, and by looking at it, that you felt that now this is a significantly different request. And yes, we will allow, and it would be a new application that would be renoticed in public hearing and all that. But yeah, you would have to agree that it was not effectively just, oh, you know, can we have 9 feet? You know, sorry, can we have 11 feet? And have you look at it and say, we've basically adjudicated this already.
Right. I mean, in my mind, you know, I heard like rights and entitlement. I mean, I think the neighbors have a right and entitlement to a quality of life. And I think looking out your back door and looking at a pool right there is not a quality of life, and it's not necessary. This is not something that has to happen, right? It's something that they want, but the people who already exist there and have this, I think they have a right to maintain their quality of life that they already have.
Right, I mean, this is fundamentally the purpose of zoning, is that some pieces of property aren't suitable for certain uses as deemed by elected government in the laws that they write in order to protect the rights of your neighbors. Like,
It's a good
that's
point.
it.
And let's say that the yard was even smaller and it was going to be 5 foot setbacks. Are we supposed to approve it just because, well, that's the size of the lot and they're entitled to
because everybody gets a pool?
No, I mean, like
Right.
I think Mark brought it up earlier, when you buy a house or you buy a piece of property, before you do it, you kind of look at what you have and you understand what you'll be able to work with.
Yeah.
And a pool is a pool is a luxury. It's not like you're in, where, you say, okay, a house, I want to expand my, this is a luxury. You're looking for a limited luxury, which is only used a certain time of the year. And it's not an entitlement. And the people that do have pools have met all the requirements. They have bigger lots, but again, as saying, you bought a triangular lot, and the other precedent that I do not want to set with this, especially in this subdivision, is that because it's a clustered lot, you have irregular shaped lots. So what happens if the neighbor 20 parcels down who has an irregular shaped lot comes in and says, well, you gave it to them around the corner, I have one. And as Andrew just said, just because, or maybe Dan said, just because you have it doesn't mean you're entitled to it, or doesn't mean that your property can accommodate it.
And that was the reason I asked Lisa whether there's any mention in the cluster lots about pools and the sort of, obviously not right to one, but any sort of additional leniency beyond the original code that goes along with the leniency on the lot size, because there is a value to the preservation of open land, which is why you're allowing smaller lot sizes, right? So the cluster development,
and usually,
the intent is not to chop up all of the natural land. It's to make the properties a little bit denser and leave some things unspoiled, which is good.
And usually,
right?
And usually, I was being on the planning board. Usually, when we do a cluster, we don't. Once the plot plan is approved, they don't specifically say, well, because this is a triangular lot, we're going to give them an extra 10 or 15%. Is once the lot is determined and the house is set on it, then it's subject to everything else, as Lisa said earlier, to all the other requirements within the
right.
village.
And then the person who chooses to buy it looks at the property, and if they want a pool, they can probably see just by looking at the backyard that that's going to be difficult, even without getting into the code of it. But if they had asked anybody, or the code is publicly available, you should be able to determine that. So.
Right. And the people next to them even said, we bought, our lot comes to a point. They knew it, they knew the shape of their lot. They knew that they seemed to understand the constrictions of their lot. So, I mean, again, the entitlement argument that Andrew made just didn't really fly with me. Antonio, you got any comments? You look like you're very pensive over there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the survey real close, and
you want to share it again?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought I was asking Antonio. I didn't mean to be curt with the request, Lisa.
There.
So they're asking for a 50% variance, right? That's just in basic terms, right?
Plus or minus, yeah.
That's how it was framed, right? I think on the app, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, yes, 50%.
But, there is a way. I mean, again, the design is not ripe, right? They're not coming to us with a specific design where they sat there and said, this is exactly what we're doing. All we need you to do is review this and go through the criteria. But it's a little bit open-ended, right? So is there a way for them to get this, right? I mean,
there's no way for them to not have to require a variance in my mind. I think but could they require less than a 50% variance? I think so.
And I think that was Andrew's argument, was if you gave us a design, whether it was kidney shape, square, round, pick a shape, you may need 8 on one side and 10 on the, your numbers may change if you have a specific design. It might be 9 and 8, which change your percentages to 40s and 30s somewhere.
The thing for me is that the substantial thing, right? Even if that were reduced, right, that still wouldn't, to me, outweigh the detriment to the surrounding area, right? Which is, even a smaller pool is going to be very, very prominent and visible, just because of the way the lot is set up.
Look, we're the zoning board. We're not redesigning people's projects, but the frustrating part is they didn't even try. They didn't try to design the project. And so, in other words, you have to try to solve the problem before you can come and say that you can't solve it without a big ask.
Right, and that's where I put that back on the expediter, because the expediter, who should have experience in this, should say to them, listen, come, talk to your pool guy and say, what shape do you want? Curvilinear, kidney, square, circular, and let's put it on there, because that's what the board wants to see. I'm not comfortable approving something with a building envelope, because I just think it shows very little, like, let's just throw something at them and get what we can get, and then we'll build. So I think it shows, a lack of anything. The argument about getting rid of the gazebo to help make it fit didn't fly for me either, because I don't think the gazebo has any effect on this one way or another, especially since it's so far outside the building envelope. I didn't really buy that argument either. So I think I think they could have gone to a pool guy, and said, listen, give me a shape. Andrew, you're an architect. If they gave you rough dimensions of a shape, you could lay it on a survey. I'm sure you could, right?
Here's the other thing.
More fairly accurate than that.
Here's the other thing is they actually have the room for an as-of-right pool here, but they've taken it up with decking. So in other words, there is a backyard here and there is some space to work with, but there are 2 large wooden decks and something else going on. I'm not sure what that is. And a hot tub on one of those decks. So it's, in other words, they've built their workable envelope already with something else.
Good point.
And if they want the pool that badly, yes, it's an added expense, but you try to creatively use your property within your rights to not bug your neighbor and still get what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes you don't always get what you want the way you ask for it. Sometimes you have to, like as Andrew's laying out now, if you get rid of deck 1 and deck 2 or relocate hot tub 3, you maybe only need a 1-foot variance or substantially less, without doing the math, but probably you wouldn't even need a variance, it looks like, but they're not willing to do that. And I think
if the purpose of telling people what they can and can't do with their property is not about being overbearing, it's about protecting your neighbors. And this is a case where if the neighboring house is right here, then it's almost as if they're each 2 conventional lots that share a backyard. This pool is in their backyard, right? So it is not unreasonable to say that a triangular shaped lot like this is just not appropriate for a swimming pool. If they can fit it in as of right or create a smaller ask, I'll hear it again with a smaller ask and a design personally. But I'm comfortable personally with voting against this now.
Well, I think I don't think be against rehearing this application if they came in with something a little more specific and were willing to try a little harder with the wood decks, whether you lose a few feet off per deck or something and reduce the numbers. But,
So we didn't leave the hearing open. We didn't leave the hearing open. We did not. So they couldn't submit a design within the next month.
You could, if you, not that I this isn't actually, you could hold your decision, give them the opportunity, but you would then need to reopen the hearing and it would have to be renoticed. So
but they're going to have to renotice if they come back anyway. And in fact, they'll have to ask for permission and they may choose to withdraw in the meantime is also an option that would save them more options. I don't know. How does that work?
Well, I have a problem with that, Andrew, just for the fact that it's not our job to read. I mean, you just brought up a point with the decks, which was very valid. It's their job to do that, not for us to, you know, I understand your point, and we could leave it open, but again, they hired an expediter. This guy, you know, if it was a resident, maybe by himself, I might be a little more, but I'm not, I don't feel comfortable going, I don't feel like I'd support the course of action unless anyone else has any other comments or questions.
I think it's,
if we leave it open, then we're forced to hear whatever they bring back. Whereas if we close it and they can petition, and based upon what we see, we could choose to take it or leave it, right? Which I think is what we're looking for here.
So it's
which is
more or
what
less,
we did for, which is what we did with the ferry building.
Got it. All right, just asking the question.
No, you know, I'm glad you did.
What do
Lisa,
we
can you
need-
take down that so we can take the vote?
Yeah.
Yeah, Antonio, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, they're showing us a proposed distance of 18 feet from the actual dwelling, right? That was one of the markings on there. What do we need? What do we need, if anything, from?
You have to be 10 feet off the dwelling unit.
Right. Okay. Yep.
But if you split that difference and you said you went 10, you would, I mean, you definitely drop your numbers. I think they would just, this is what we have. We don't want to lose anything. We want to shoehorn a pool in there. I mean, that's not you know, it doesn't, I don't know if I feel like that's a good enough reason to approve a variance in this case, especially since we'd be hard pressed to say, well, there's no one else in the neighborhood like we did with that flag lot. There were a number of flag lots in that area. We were able to say, okay, they all needed variances or had to go through the board, you know, to do this. I think we might be, especially in this cluster, might be opening a precedent, but.
Right, we'd be making more precedent than we'd be following precedent in this case.
Yes. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this? All right. I'm going to make a motion that Lisa, give me the secret on this first.
Sure. The secret is also a type 2 action requiring no further review because it is an area variance for a single family dwelling. Did you walk through the criteria on this one?
I did with Andrew, but I'm going to do it right now, just like I did with the last one.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. So whether this benefit can be achieved by other means feasible to the applicant, I think, as Andrew Thomas showed, if you reconfigure your decks or are willing to at least make a concession, you could at least, if not eliminate the need for a variance, reduce it to some degree, maybe even significantly. So I believe there's things that the applicant, plus not giving us the design really hamstrings us.
Yeah, I'd say it's unclear, but the applicant hasn't demonstrated that they can. So in other words, if the burden is on the applicant to demonstrate that they can achieve it by other means, we're not satisfied that that's been shown.
Whether an undesirable change in neighborhood character or nearby properties, I think it would create an undesirable change because none of the other properties, as said earlier, needed a variance to get their pools in. I understand this triangular lot, and you want to say it's a unique situation, but you bought the lot knowing what you were getting yourself into. As Dan said before, you look at lots and you say, okay, when I buy this, can I if I plan on putting a pool in, could I do it? So whether the request is substantial, I think 50% is substantial, especially in this case, on the shape of the lot, even accentuates it even more. Whether the request will have an adverse physical or environmental effects, I don't think we're not in a sensitive area here, so I don't think that's the case. And whether the alleged difficulty is self-created, I believe it is by their desire to want to put a pool, triangular shaped lot. That being said, I'm going to make a motion that we deny this application as submitted. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Let's Antonio second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Lisa, and then when you do talk to the applicant, just you heard we wouldn't be opposed to if they made some changes and wrote us a letter and they made some changes, not just gave me a shape of a pool with 10 feet, but if they made some changes or concessions, I think the board would be willing to hear it again if they made substantial changes, not resubmitting a kidney-shaped pool with 10 feet, with 10-foot variances required.
Yes, okay. I will let them know.
All right. That being said, if no one has anything else tonight, I'm going to let everyone go and enjoy the rest of their evening.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.